Hello, everyone, and welcome to the KIVALUE Retail Technology Podcast. It's great to be back with a new episode. Today is going to be exciting because we're going to talk about a topic that we have actually touched on before. It is store grouping / store clustering. As always, sometimes you call it store grouping, sometimes you call it store clustering. And yes, before we deep dive into the topic itself, I have two great guests with me here today. So we have Lutz Kämmerer, which you know from previous podcasts. Lutz, hi Lutz, how you doing?
I'm okay. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Yeah, great to be here again.
And it's good to have you. You're a real expert on the topic of store grouping, so excited to have you back and talk a little bit more about more advanced and more sophisticated approaches when it comes to this topic. And then also we have Giorgio Loiodice, who is a first-time guest. He's also KIVALUE. Hi, Giorgio. How are you doing?
Fine, thanks. Thank you for inviting me for this interesting topic. I love that.
Yeah, it's a pleasure, obviously, to have you here. So Lutz, you're head of business consulting here at KIVALUE. You've been in the business, in the retail business for a long time, and you're very experienced when it comes to this topic, store clustering. So, but Giorgio, you are new to the audience, and maybe you can say a couple words about your experience, what your role is at KIVALUE,
Sure.
and how you've been exposed to store grouping in the past.
Thank you. Yes, I'm new. I'm not really a rookie because I've like 25 years of experience in fashion planning and retail planning. I've been working with software vendor for a couple of decades and then consulting with big firm like Deloitte, and now KIVALUE, which is like, that is small focused, very expert organization. I've been working with around 200 brands across Europe and North America in the last couple of decades, and primarily bringing, bridging technology and process and business. So basically helping with best practices, but as well help transforming the organization, introducing new technology, which we know it's a big challenge now because of the sophistication, the impact on the organization, and all the rest. I've been working with it fashion company, luxury company, specialty retail like consumer electronics, beauty, jewelry, in a pretty extended scope of process in planning. So merchandise, financial planning, assortment, allocation, distribution, pricing. So that's what I've been doing for lifetime, and manufacturing as well when you're a vertically integrated retailer.
Perfect. Yeah. Well, a lot of experience coming from you, Giorgio. So thank you for being here. You're based out of Milan, right? In
Yes.
Italy. Wonderful
Yes.
city.
We
So
are spread out organization. It's about people, not location. So
yeah, exactly. It's about people, not location. That's a very very good sentence here.
but happy
So
to
yeah,
we serve Europe. Europe is our home, really. Now it's kind of everything
yeah. I
is around
mean,
the corner here. So
again, there's no borders, there's no limit, for us to help our customers. So I think that's important to call out. Yes, so let's talk a little bit about store clustering. So, as mentioned before, 2 years ago, Lutz and I have already recorded a podcast on that specific topic. Back then, it was more around the basics of store clustering. By the way, we're going to actually link that episode here in the notes of this recording here. So you can take a look at it. It's, as I said, more about the actual basics of store clustering. What we touched on back then was, first of all, the motivation. So why do you do store clustering? And we said, obviously, that you cluster your stores to simplify your assortment planning process. And that applies if you have a lot of different stores, right? If you have a lot of different stores that you need to plan, and it's a struggle for you to plan for each of the different stores individually. So what you do is you cluster the stores based on specific KPIs on specific attributes of the store, and then you plan for the groups of the stores and not the individual stores. There's always a trade-off. That's also what was one of the learnings. There's a trade-off between the effort to plan the assortments per individual store and also have assortments that do fit each individual store 100%, because there will be some trade-offs that just kind of result from the grouping that you do. Also, we mentioned that it's all about the depth and width of the assortment. So how many options do you actually offer, and how deep is the assortment? So how many SKUs do you actually then deliver to the store? And we also talked a little bit about the algorithms that we use. One of them, and probably the one that we use most of the time, or have been using most of the time also with our clients, is K-means. We touched on that a little bit, and we will also touch on that today and see if that is really the best algorithm or if there are alternatives. Yeah, and then we touched also on the data, the KPIs. We said that from our experience, it usually is sales and space that our customers are looking at for each individual store, and that these attributes are being used to actually cluster. So that's just as a quick summary of the conversation, which is from 2 years ago. I have to mention, and I have to say that this approach is still very valid. So whenever we talk to customers and fashion retailers and retailers out there, this is still, let's say, the first step that you're talking about, the first step that those companies actually take when it comes to store clustering. But today we want to focus a little bit more on the more sophisticated, more innovative, more advanced approaches, because from a technical perspective, there's a lot of opportunity. Also from a data perspective, there's a lot of opportunity. And also, from the perspective of AI, machine learning, and so on, there's a lot of potential also on that side. So, giving you that.
Actually,
Yeah.
if I can comment on data quickly, just now to warm up the audience discussion here. Now, what you mentioned of sales and space, I mean, that was discussed a few years ago, but it's been there for a while. It's a best practice, actually, But the more we hear about new algorithms and so on, people tend to look for more data, and very often. I would say normally I distinguish between internal and external data. You think like, okay, it's a store, but what is the traffic? And then, it's a sale period and it's sensitive to climate. Rain forecast. Are people going to go to the mall or so? That's one direction, which also machine learning is really hungry with data. They want to have a lot of data to do more prediction, more sophisticated modeling. But at the same time, very often we have low-hanging fruit. We have data in the company which are there because everyone has a sellout. But then now even thinking about more, order, inventory, other metrics that are there and everyone knows and can be leveraged to make a more accurate work. That's something to be considered. Probably we're going to say a little bit more along our conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, as you say, external data is more and more available than it was before. That's absolutely clear. There's a lot of tools also to scrape customer and competition data.
Sure.
A lot of more resources for data that you can potentially use, as you said, potentially for climate and so on. So from that perspective, I agree. There's a lot more potential to use more than just sales in space. And that's exactly one point. If I look back into the past, I think when I did my diploma thesis in 2004, we also thought about what kind of influence has the weather on actual sales data, on a sales forecast. And it wasn't easy back then to have real time and also forecast data on the weather. Again, that's so much easier today. And that's why you can consider so many more options. One thing
I also want to bring one point, because now we all have a degree. I have a mechanical engineer, and Lutz has his PhD and so on. But I mean, we are practical people. We make these things work in business. So it's not just about, because the hype on AI and all the analytics is a lot about is mathematics. But then my point is, do you have the data? Because sophistication sometimes is complexity. So we are practical people. We make these things work, so we know when data really add value or just add complexity. So I think it's important to consider going forward.
That's a very good comment. Yeah, it depends on the weight also of the influencing factors, right? If the weather just doesn't matter, okay, you don't have to add it. If it just has a very tiny influence on your clustering, you might not have to use it. Absolutely agree. But one thing I want to bring up, which I think could be a good approach, is the following. So whenever we spoke with customers in the past, and it was about store clustering, my experience was that the customer always thought just about the sales channel, brick and mortar. So just, okay, what are my stores? How much sales do I have in specific subcategories or categories per store? And what's the space that I have in these stores, for example, for subcategories? But from my perspective, I've heard this also in the industry and talking to other people. From my perspective, it makes sense to kind of think a little bit more omni-channel when it comes to clustering. So one idea is to really involve the e-com channel into the clustering approach, saying, okay, on the e-com side, I also have sales. I do have the location data, obviously, so I can assign, a specific sales, a purchase to a specific store because it's in the same area. I can also have demographic data. I know who actually purchased that product in that area. And as we all know, when we think about omnichannel, there are situations where people buy online, return in store, vice versa. So if you really want to execute your omnichannel approach, also in store grouping, store clustering, my theory is let's take a look at the e-commerce data. Let's see if we can get this also involved into the store clustering. Do you agree with that approach?
Yeah, I think now being open to possibilities is important. That actually is our job. Again, also judge if it's valuable or not. But you're right. Very often now channels operate separately, but reality, and even when you look at that journey, and it's more about fulfillment, no real-time order, but planning can still leverage the data. Okay, because when we create a plan for the next season or we allocate to stores and we create the right offer, why not considering who's shopping there?
And you know your customers best in e-com, right? That's the point.
Yeah,
I mean
you have
exactly.
all the data from
if we summarize it, we are trying to know who's buying what and where. So the simplification of the store is the box, and we don't look at people. It's a simplification. It works, but no, we can do more. More data available. So yeah, I agree.
No, absolutely. So that's one thing that we definitely would like to look a little bit deeper into with our customers. But data is one thing. And the other side of store clustering is using the data and actually running it through an algorithm. You can call it AI, you can call it machine learning, whatever, right? I mean, there's lots of buzzwords around that. And in the end, it's typically mathematical algorithms. And last time, 2 years ago, we already touched on K-means, and K-means has been around for a long time. It's one of the, as I believe, the most used algorithm when it comes to store clustering. Lutz, I know you have been looking at the different algorithms and specifically K-means. What can you tell us about that? Is there any innovation going on in that area?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I agree. I think K-means is probably the most used one when it comes to AI algorithms. I bet there are pretty much old-fashioned store clustering methods used, like the ones based on sales and space independently, but that is fair enough. The big difference for K-means is that you can do, or that you in the traditional old-fashioned way, where you have your sales and space clustering, you do that independent from each other. Right? You cluster your stores based on sales and cluster them into groups like ABC. Then you cluster your stores according to sales, or name them 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have the combinations like A1 or B2 or C5 store or whatever. For the k-means algorithm, it's a different approach because you do the clustering for both attributes at the same time. So you can think of your stores being aligned on a sheet of paper in a two-dimensional space with the axis of like sales and space, and then you try to find a cloud around the points in the on your sheet of paper, which represent the group of stores in the end. By finding the most compact clouds around these dots, that is then forming your cluster, and that is a pretty of a difference compared to the independent clustering, and it has some advantage because you're not limited to those two dimensions like sales and space or whatever it is. You can also add a third or fourth dimension, because the only thing that you need to know is you need to be able to measure distances between stores. It's like the distance on that sheet of paper between 2 points or in the space, in three-dimensional or fourth dimensional space. Yeah.
And just a quick question there. Is it true that who decides how many different store groups result from that algorithm?
Yeah,
Something?
That is something you need to know before. So you need to tell the algorithm, okay, I want to go for like 4 store clusters or 15 or whatever your number is.
Mm-hmm.
It is often considered to be a disadvantage. And of course it is, because you tell the system, I want to have 10 stores. On the other hand, like Giorgio said, we have a business case, right? So people usually have an idea of how many stores they can, store clusters they can handle. And they also know their store basis in terms of, I'm pretty sure 3 clusters is not enough, but at the same time, I know I cannot handle 15 or something. And the good thing is that the k-means algorithm is a fast algorithm. So, and you can try different approaches in terms of different numbers of clusters. And there is this so-called elbow method that you can use in order to find a kind of good number of store clusters, because with every new cluster that you add, what happens is if you measure the distances between the store and the centroid of each cluster, and you sum up all the distances, the sum of these distances gets smaller and smaller by every cluster that you add, and that is typically kind of significant change of sum of distances, until to a certain point where it does not change that much anymore, and that gives you a good indication of what a good number of clusters is, because that point where it stops being decreasing this distances, then that's a good idea of which is a kind of optimal number of clusters that should be used. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
At the same time, I said the algorithm is kind of fast, it's robust, and it's easy to understand, because you just, as said, define how many clusters you want, then you can arbitrarily pick up some initial starts for the centroids, and then you start measuring the distances between the stores to these centroids, and the lowest smallest difference is then telling you to which centroid your store belongs to, and then you form for each cluster a kind of new centroid by having the average, and then you perform it like a couple of times as an iterative approach, which then gives you, in the end, after a couple of iterations, a good result. And that's easy to understand, and it's fairly easy to implement as well. I think that is also the reason why it is that common, and people like it a lot.
But I mean, are there any disadvantages for k-means, or is there any reason why there should be a shift to a different one, or be more innovative, more sophisticated one?
As I said, the number of classes need to be known. Some people consider that to be a disadvantage, and also if you have like outlying stores that are far away from the others, for whatever reason, or measured by whatever metrics, in terms of it has a much bigger sales than all the others, or it's a flagship store with much more space, or is completely different in terms of geographics or whatever, then it might result in kind of unbalanced results. And that is something that needs to be kept in mind. But there will for sure be good reasons, because if that store is so different, then you might think of handling it as a different, or as a cluster of its own anyway. But that's then up to the business topic.
Lutz, in practical world, if I'm a retailer, mid-sized retailer, I have 200 stores across multiple countries, and I know that 8 is my magic number, not the number of cluster I want to actually handle. Because of the methods, no, I impose 8, system crunch numbers for the 200, and it basically put every store or store slash category slash season, depending how you want to do that, now into one of the 8 buckets, with the potential drawback that they are close to that point, centroid, basically the and maybe one is far, but is closer to this one because and it's very far from the other 7. So it will fall in any case in one cluster. So that's why maybe the exception is not great with the exception. But you know what? Now, people sometimes expect that these mathematical methods kind of solve the problem, but they are a good starting point. I think now we all been living into planning, simulation, what if, exception. Oh, what do we do with this one? So the machine does the job, but no, it's our recommendation practice and see, daily life is like, you know what? You always need to be able to manage exception on yourself, right?
Yeah.
So do we need to really sophisticate and go for more probabilistic methods? Oh, you know what? This store can be 83% in this cluster and 27% in that one. Okay, complication. Just give me a simple methods and I want to manage the exception. Maybe that would be our recommendation, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah. And there's one more thing, Christoph, as you mentioned about the disadvantages. I would not call it a disadvantage because it lies in the nature of clustering stores at the same time by different attributes like sales and space. There is something that you need to be aware of, and that's what I call the scaling. That is the if you have one axis which is the sales in like 1,000 euros and the other one is the square meter or the space in square meters, then you need to know how much worth is a square meter in terms of sales, because if I would like to measure the distance, I need to have a scaling between these two, and that's pretty sensitive, because if you change the scaling, that will dramatically change the result of your clustering. So that is something you need to be aware of, and it needs to be considered carefully. Let me call it like that. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, that shows, it's very mathematical topic, obviously. So, you need to have someone that really understands the advantages, the disadvantages, and the different aspects of an algorithm like that in order to produce the best result. Well, interesting. But I mean, the point is, Lutz, if I understand what you're saying, also Giorgio here, K-means has been around for a long time. It's nothing new. It's not like this magical machine learning algorithm that suddenly does like the best job ever when it comes to store clustering. It's actually something that we would still recommend and still continue using also in today's challenges when it comes to store clustering. Is that correct?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Giorgio?
So let me be provocative here, because there's been a big hype on AI analytical methods, data scientists, new roles in the organization, and it's a lot about data and algorithms. Yes, but but you need to also consider the use case. I mean, we are retail expert, and clustering is, in terms of algorithm, is a generic mathematical problem, which is about how do data points concentrate around something, or but these techniques can be used from computer vision. How do I recognize an image or a plate that could go into the city center of a city, which are problem which has been there for 20 years. Okay, but clustering stores for retail purpose, and also, am I allocating or replenishing? You know what? It might be different. So it's not just about mathematics here. It's more about what you want to get out of that. Okay, and even the simple and well-known two-dimensional K-means, space and sales. Potentially, you have two stores with the same space and the same revenues. One is in the city center, in front of a train station, a lot of traffic. One is a small village store, and they face different consumer. One is high traffic, so it's about high volume, depth, little offering width. You don't need to turn the stock, your inventory every month. If you are into a more small village, loyal people, they don't buy the same yellow T-shirt 2 or 3 times in a season. They want to have a yellow, a pink, and blue. So it's completely different, but they sell the same revenues in the same space. So the sales density is the same. If you go
Mm.
into rent, if you go into P&L, they look the same, but they need a different merchandising
Yeah.
Yeah.
setup. Definitely. So it's not just about mathematics. We know we have workaround. We've all been using like attributes, like is it a city center or a mall? We have been doing that, not just to add more information, but don't just take the math as it is. No, there's no
Yeah.
magic
And
in the crystal ball here in the black
but
box.
saying it's in the city center, or or it's somewhere out there in a small village, this describes the store, right? But in the end, here it's about more customer segmentation, because the customer is different,
It's
just
different,
in those
exactly.
different areas, right?
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense to look more into this. Like, okay, what are the customers? I mean, obviously, here we have the same issue that we touched on before. When we talk about e-commerce, we know the
Mhm.
customer. If we talk about brick and mortar, we typically don't. There's some workarounds when it comes to loyalty programs and so on, but typically the information is very difficult to get. So yeah,
I've been working on this topic on no, trying to think a little bit out of the box, or the no, let's add another metric or KPI driver. Really think what problem I'm trying to solve here. I want to know who's buying what. So why
mhm,
don't we take inspiration from others? Say, for example, Martech, marketing technology. You receive personalized email because they know who you are, they know what you shop, they create personalized messages. And why merchandisers still use the same name season sales from last year and kind of copy paste and replicate, and not trying to understand really who's shopping there. And this is also amplified because generation changing, Gen Z buy differently. There are growing numbers. Where do they shop? I mean, which channel do they use? It's getting more and more complicated in that sense. It's an opportunity. Okay,
mhm.
not to over engineer, because more data is complication, but everyone has a CRM, everyone has a loyalty program, and data are there. Just look at sales, sell out, but cross transaction against users and personas, as we call it, no customer types.
Yeah.
And there's a way to learn who's buying what and where, to create a more accurate grouping, basically.
Yeah.
That's something we're working on. Of course, there are objectives like, you know what, my loyalty program covers only 40%. I mean, that's statistics. I mean, exit poll predict pretty accurately not elections, just with a little percentage of the poll. I mean,
True.
so don't be afraid if your loyalty program only covered 40%, which something one client once told me. No, we can make it work. Extrapolate
Mm.
the 100% based on that. So it's some work for experts that know what they're doing, and they know what now, like us, focus on this type of business. No, it's not about generic algorithms here. It's more
Yeah.
business driven modeling that makes a difference.
No, makes absolute sense. Very interesting, and maybe to kind of get a little bit into the summary of that conversation here. So it's about many different aspects, right? It's about the data, internal, external. It's about the customer. What kind of customer are you dealing with? In which location? It's about channels. E-com, brick and mortar, maybe even other channels that maybe even wholesale. If you do have a wholesale business and you sell to your key accounts in areas, you potentially can also use that data. So there's different aspects there, and it's also about the algorithm and how you actually set up your algorithm in order to, in the end, uh, actually support a business case. And I think that's the most important one here. So the business case, how can you create a store cluster process / technology, / system that actually supports your business case and that increases your success when it comes, okay, where do I allocate, where do I replenish, how do I put the right products in front of the right customers, or in front of the customers that actually will buy. So there's a lot of different aspects here. And from my experience, typically when a retailer tries to approach this topic, they look at implementing a solution internally into their processes, into their architecture, IT architecture, and use their resources to do this in regularly, right? But my question to you guys is also, wouldn't it make sense to think about outsourcing something like this? Because in the end, all you need to do as a retailer is provide the data and the approach, the business case, and somebody else could, potentially come up with the results. Is that something that you see as a valid approach?
Yeah, that's what we're offering, right? I mean, that's something that we can do as KIVALUE, of course. So the good thing is it's scalable in terms of the data that you would like to use for the clustering, and then it's not that much. And it's nothing that you need to do every single hour or something. The store clustering is something you need to have available at the beginning of the season. Maybe in between you can review it, but it's the result is then being used for like the whole season, almost the whole season. So that's actually one of the easiest things to be done in considering a whole merchandise assortment planning process, right?
I agree. Let's touch on a good point. This is not one of the processes that you need to fully to automate, or it's not
Exactly.
something running every day like replenishment needs to be working by exception, crunching numbers. This is more about potentially creative process, because maybe next season you want to consider a different approach to your clustering and maybe review. So no one will do more than every quarter, basically, because a minimum every season, but maybe a review. So not more than 4 times a year. So you really need to have someone which is focused on those techniques internally. Can you afford that to the right quality? Maybe just going for experts outside is a possibility, which is actually is even a technical possibility, because what we're talking about here, and we've been implementing planning software for decades, and in every RFP there's always, okay, tell me about assortment and tell me about your clustering methods. It's always there. But don't think like you need to reinvent completely your legacy system, what you have in place, just to have a better clustering, because we can have it as a standalone system that does the job simulatively, and then talk to your planning system in the right dimensionality, call it, now, to make it work. Just even what I was saying before, what if I think in not in stores but in customer types? We're not proposing here to kind of reorganize your merchandising in customer type. You still think because your people, you have a ladies working on now on shoes. Okay, that's one category manager. That's one responsibility. I mean, the organization still continue working that way, but we can add a level of sophistication or granularity or detail and run it outside, and then talk to your existing system without rewriting it. Okay, because otherwise now it would be a very lengthy process. Now, what we're talking about here can be it's outsourced, can be and it has to pay back quickly. So it's not a big investment, but impact the results.
Yeah.
That's the future of store clustering. 100% agree, right? Provide the information, the data, and your requirements, let's say, for the business case, and then just receive the results back, have them be integrated into your system and your solutions, and take the result to work with it. So very good approach. Yes, I can only say to everyone who's listening, if you're interested to learn more about store clustering and how we can offer that service to you, just reach out to us here, at KeyValue. Again, this podcast is on different platforms. It's on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast. If you listen to this and you like it, give us a like, follow us. We would really appreciate it. And we're going to produce more interesting podcast episodes very soon. Oh, I think we lost Lutz, but yeah, I was about done. So Lutz, maybe he's going to come back. Lutz and Giorgio, thank you so much for your time. This is a very interesting topic. It's more sophisticated topic for sure. It's not a simple, merchandise planning approach. It really is very mathematical, very theoretical in the end. And I hope that the audience was able to follow us here. Leave us a comment. Thank you very much, and have a great day. See you soon. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.